Hello, it's me, Santa, the big guy, coming to you live from the North Pole and the land up over. I'd like to welcome you all to Art 101 with Mr. Burgher. You're in for a real treat. Mr. Burgher is going to address one of my favorite subjects, the history of Santa art.
Art 101 with Mr. Burgher.
Thank you very much, Mr. Claus, for the kind introduction. And scholars, welcome back to Art 101 with me, Mr. Burgher. Now, I'm a professional artist and a master educator who's attempting to provide you with the best in art historical content. If you like the video, I'd love it. It'd be a great gift for you to interact with it.
I think it's time for old Matt to tell you a little story. Gather around, kiddies.
So today, as Mr. Claus mentioned, we're going to take a look at the artistic evolution of Santa Claus. So in this episode, we're going to be jumping into Santa Claus and the origins and the imagery of Santa Claus. In the visual history of this, it began way back in the 17th century England. This is the location of a very heated cultural battle over Christmas. A Protestant group known as the Puritans, they wanted to clean their own house of the Catholic traditions that they thought as pagan, ungodly, and they very much opposed the celebration of Christmas.
Oh, why don't you stop annoying people?
Well, I'm sorry. Hey!
And so writers began telling stories for the first time of a Father Christmas. There were plays, there were illustrated books, and there was one very famous story of the time where Father Christmas had to defend himself in front of the court. It's the original version of Miracle on 34th Street, like 17th century style.
Therefore, the Post Office Department, a branch of the federal government, recognizes this man, Kris Kringle, to be the one and only Santa Claus.
Now, there was a large population of these Puritan immigrants that were coming to this new colony of America. And Christmas really struggled to get off the ground in this new region. In fact, in the United States, Christmas wasn't even really celebrated until the end of the Civil War. Now, it was a writer in the city of New Amsterdam, now known as New York, who would become the first writer to establish a Santa Claus. This was the writer Washington Irving. He would use Dutch folk culture to lend credence to this new creation of Santa Claus.
We don't blindly stick to every outmoded aspect of our traditions.
And just to clarify for my Office fans out there, Belsnickel is not a derivative of St. Nicholas. He's his own character from the Germanic traditions that helped develop Santa. But anyway, Washington Irving's 1809 story almost single-handedly creates Santa Claus as an American legend by presenting him as an already existing Dutch character. He would establish the flying sleigh, the pipe, him putting his finger by his nose, but this was accompanied without illustration, just visual verbiage.
Fragile. It must be Italian.
There are lots of literary pieces that go into the makeup of Santa Claus. One theory is that Santa Claus might have stemmed from Siberian shaman. Another is that he is a variation of Odin. The winking, sleigh riding, and the reindeer were borrowed from German and Norse legends. In the region around the Netherlands, Sinterklaas was a skinny old man with flowing white hair and a big old beard. He would be seen with a red suit trimmed in fur, and around mid-November he would arrive on a steamboat from Spain. Then he would climb atop his white horse that was capable of flight, looking through his little book of all of the good boys and girls, where he would distribute to them candy and ginger cookies. And on the eve of St. Nicholas Day, again that would be December the 5th, he would ride his flying horse to deliver presents down the chimney to all of those good boys and girls.
Peace on earth, give me presents.
Be careful, Sprocket. These could be from some foreign planet.
But the one that I'm probably most familiar with, growing up with, is that he is a spin-off the Christian Saint Nicholas. Now, Saint Nicholas of Myra was a 4th century Greek bishop. He was known for his generosity and kindness, and there are stories of him anonymously throwing dowry money into a home, where it would land in the stockings that were hung by the fire to dry. As the patron saint of children, his feast day is celebrated on December the 6th, and was one of the most popular saints during the Renaissance, but slowly declined over time, again because of the Protestant Reformation. But regardless of a lot of these details, Santa Claus is purely American, and by that I mean he is a melting pot. Ideas of German, Dutch, and English traditions are all kind of boiled together to create this character. Side note, over the years Santa would wear lots of different colors. He actually started with a blue suit and then went through green and yellow until 1868 when he appears in red because of an advertisement for sugar plums, and that seems to be the origin. And it stuck.
Now you get yarn.
Now we fast forward to Clement Clarke Moore, who wrote a poem called The Visit from St. Nicholas in 1823. And this poem really solidified the appearance of Santa Claus. Moving forward, English writer Charles Dickens wrote a very famous Christmas story in 1843 called A Christmas Carol, with illustrations created by John Leech. And it was the Ghost of Christmas Present, a youthful, muscular, robe-wearing ghost that would become the armature or the understructure of what would become the Santa Claus character. In 1902, The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus was written by the author L. Frank Baum, who was also responsible for giving us The Wizard of Oz, but he would add elaborations and details along the way that would help lend itself to this character's actions and where he's from and so forth. Side note, with our modern tradition, we oftentimes forget about the fact that Santa Claus also distributed punishments to the bad kids, not just coal in the stocking. He would often be depicted with a switch or a handful of sticks that he would use to beat and punish the bad children, which may be the reason why I as a child was absolutely petrified of Santa Claus.
You guys give up, or you're thirsty for more?
Very much influenced by Moore's poem, American cartoonist Thomas Nast would become the first American artist to really graphically lay down the jolly old elf in an illustrated way. 20 years later, Nast would return to the subject of Santa Claus and create the first image to be considered the definitive portrait of Santa. Side note, the first Christmas movie, Santa Claus, was produced in Britain in 1898, but of course Santa Claus looks much more like the Father Christmas-inspired version because of the origin. But anyway.
10 a.m. Santa's coming to town.
It was the artists J.C. Leyendecker and Norman Rockwell that would really define the look of the modern representation of Santa Claus when they would create covers for the Saturday Evening Post. When Norman Rockwell started doing Santa Clauses in 1920, he was really responsible for helping shape, pun intended, Santa Claus into this sort of plumpy physical nature of what we know as Santa Claus. He gets rid of the switches and creates this more benevolent old plump guy who just wants to give good things to good kids.
Well, the only important thing is to make the children happy.
A couple of years after these illustrations, Santa Claus was used as a marketing tool by Coca-Cola. Haddon Sunbaum was the artist responsible for creating a lot of the iconic Coca-Cola ads that really lent a lot from Moore as he began to represent Santa Claus from the 1930s until 1964.
You were right about everything, okay?
It's interesting that other popular artists have actually visited the theme of Santa Claus. One of note that I was really fascinated by is Salvador Dalí. The famed surrealist was commissioned by Hallmark to create a series of 10 original artworks that would be printed on Christmas cards, including this version of his surrealist Santa Claus. Of the 10 works, only 2 were seen as suitable for print, but boy, who wouldn't want to get a Salvador Dalí Christmas card in the mail? I mean, this is absolutely awesome. And even I myself have taken a stab at a more modern version of Santa Claus, but I think the evolution of the idea and the blending of traditions and themes and our cultural American influence of Santa Claus and who he is going to continue to evolve, and that's a great thing to make this American tradition even more inclusive and a modern spin for the modern times. My hope is that Santa is not just seen as something as a commercial character, but something that can really inspire us to be better people and for us to really reflect on the true message of positivity that generally orbits around Saint Nick.
I tell you, I love that story. Thank you for joining my telling of it, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. You have a great time out there, and enjoy your holiday season.
Now that you know all about him, you can be darn sure that come snow or high water,
Santa Claus is coming to town.